Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast. Hello, and once again, thank you so much for checking in and spending your time with me. You know, it's been a busy time around the Chiro Business Mojo studio. We are hard at work working on something for you that we are so eager to tell you about. We're not there yet, but in the coming weeks, expect a big announcement from us and the new direction we are taking. You know, in the 100 or so episodes I have done of the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, I've talked to an amazing array of very talented, intelligent, compassionate, inspiring people from all over the world. And our guest today is inspiring and dedicated and hardworking and compassionate and a lot of different things rolled up into one. She's not a chiropractor, but she's an award-winning former journalist, respected literary agent, an author, speaker, and an acclaimed book marketing consultant. Miss Wendy Keller got her first job as a newspaper reporter when she was just 16 years old, and since then she's worked for PR Newswire, Knight Ridder newspaper chain, and as managing editor of Dateline magazine. She's been the associate producer of Los Angeles and later the second largest Spanish language weekly, La Gaceta. Wendy was 26 when her own first book was published, and today she has written over 31 books under 9 pseudonyms and has 11 self-published books. She's been on a number of television programs, including Dr. Phil, Dateline NBC, CBS The Early Show, Hannity and Colmes, and more. She's been a guest on countless other shows and has been interviewed and quoted in the Chicago Tribune, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, and many more. She's taught over 20,000 authors how to get published and over 7,500 people how to get started as paid professional speakers. Please welcome Wendy Keller.
Hey, thank you for having me here. This is great, Rich.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your day to spend with us and our listeners. And I invite you to jump in and fill in any gaps I might have missed in that bio.
Well, let's see. I don't know. I mean, we've been doing a lot of great things with the new book on platform building, and I guess I should get around to adding that to it, but it's just been great. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a book, right? To create some buzz, and we got so much buzz going, I haven't even had time to make edits.
Well, that sounds exciting. We'll definitely talk about that as we go along. Why don't you, in a nutshell, just tell us about Wendy Keller, I'll cut this part out, Wendy Keller Media.
Well, Keller Media is a company I've owned. It's my 6th business. I've owned it since I was well, let's just leave it at 1989. And we sell books to publishers for authors, right? So I started out by selling screenplays. Now I sell books to publishers. I've done that about 1,500 times, 17 New York Times bestsellers, 9 international bestsellers, like you heard in the bio. And then I added on helping people become speakers, whether they want to go out and do trainings or public seminars or they want to get paid to stand in front of a room, kind of like, you know, Tony Robbins or Brian Tracy, that kind of thing. So I do that. And then as that goes forward, I've been working a lot with helping individuals build their platform so that they can grow their business. Being a speaker or an author usually isn't an end destination for someone. It's not what they want to do, but it's a great way to blow up this success of any business, bring in more patients, more clients, more customers, whatever you're looking for.
Well, that ties in perfectly because, you know, it starts with us as chiropractors. We are talking to our patients one-on-one, but we sometimes will start having classes or things like that to go outside of our office to find people. And then we're talking to larger groups, and those can get fairly big. So I think it's a skill that most of us recognize that we need, and we're always trying to develop it and get it, you know, stronger and be better at it. So let's start with really building a platform. Let's talk about your book and what is a platform and how can we build it?
Okay. Well, you know, following up on what you just said, you know, my chiropractor here in Marina Del Rey, California, he has these little things in his office, and you can come in and talk to him, and he'll spend half an hour talking to people and then answering questions for another half hour, whoop-de-doo. But the problem is that he's talking to 6 people at a time. It's taking a minimum of an hour of his time plus his staff time to prep and put the chairs out and all this other drama. And what he needs to do really is what's true for anyone. He needs to build himself a platform, a regional platform, because he only works in Southern California, I presume. People probably aren't flying in from Guam to have an adjustment. So he needs to build that kind of a platform so he not only has a reputation as a good chiropractor, but so that he has the kind of momentum so that maybe next time he has 50 people and he's doing it at a local hotel or a hospital or wherever he's got a room, and the next time he's doing it for 200, and some journalists are coming from local newspapers talking about how great he is or his technology or the fact that he's doing this special thing on back pain or whatever it is. The difference between, I got some people in my office I can talk to, and I am known as the expert in this region, that's the difference of a platform. A platform is what distinguishes you from all the competitors in your space, whether it's like you, Rich and Haley, doing a podcast, or it's somebody trying to bring in more patients to their event, or some guy trying to sell more dry cleaning. The same principles of platform apply no matter what it is you'd like to do more, sell more, and get more attention for.
So what are some of the elements of a platform?
Well, I think that really starts with someone's personality. There are people who would not want to stand, doctors who would not want to stand in front of a room and give a presentation. Well, that's fine. There are people who would love to be writing blogs or being interviewed or being on local television, whatever you want. In fact, because it's so important to build your platform, even if you have staff to help you, to build your platform based on your true personality, in conjunction with my most recent book, I actually built a testing instrument that all of your listeners are welcome to go to. It's on our website, www.kellermedia, that's KELLER media.com/bizquiz. BIZQUIZ. And if you go to kellermedia.com/bizquiz, the first step is to take the quiz there and find out what your personality is so that you know what part of the hundreds of ways you could build your platform would be best for you personally. Whether or not, again, you have staff helping you make it bigger or easier or not, at least you'll know where your low-hanging fruit is, where you're likely to be best. And then you build it from there, because you could build it any way you want, but you can't build all of it. Nobody has that kind of time.
Well, I think I get what you're saying because, for example, I started this podcast because I thought I should start a blog, but I much prefer talking over writing. So for me, this was a better way to go. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, exactly, right? And so that's one of the things I'm always telling people. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be fun, right? You're having fun doing this as opposed to sitting there trying to sweat out some words on paper, right?
Exactly. Well,
exactly.
How long?
So writing a blog, doing a local show, doing a YouTube show, putting together local events, doing a podcast, getting the local journalists or national journalists to interview you, writing a book. Obviously, I'm an expert on that. Going around the country, doing live events if you want to teach, the Parker method to other doctors, or, all these other things that you've got in your head. There's a path for all of that. There's a strategy. There's a system. There are people who are doing it right who can help you leap over the impediments and create something exciting. You just got to know what you want to do out of literally the hundreds of things you could do that will exponentially grow your business and increase your patient base in sometimes as little as 60 days.
Wow. That's a lot faster than I would have thought. I thought, I guess it is a case-by-case basis, but if it's the right platform you're building with the right person, 60 days, that sounds great, because I think maybe some people find it daunting.
Well, I'm sure they do, because they think, oh, wow, I got to do all this stuff. But that's the point. That's why I wrote the test, because people always say, oh, I don't want to do all that stuff. I don't really want to write a blog because I'm not a good writer. And then I'd have to, English isn't my first language. I'd have to hire an editor. And, what if I need to lose 10 pounds before I go on forget about it. Just do the things that are easy for you. There's so many ways. The book I just wrote, The Ultimate Guide to Platform Building, that we'll talk about later, that's like a recipe book. You want to make a chocolate cake, or you want to make, chicken casserole? Pick what you want and just do it. Everything's got a set of steps, and just follow the steps and just start in one place. Watch how you're getting results. Pay attention to the analytics, and you'll own that space, particularly with the people who resonate with you personally, because let's say you're an extroverted person and you really want to get out there and do live events and shake hands, just as an example of one of the ways you could build a platform. Well, the great news is that, the people that you'll meet are people who like to come to live events. So you're probably not going to meet the bookworms and the introverts. You'll meet people who are more like you. So they'll like you more when they actually participate and start receiving your services. And you'll create better, longer lasting relationships with greater customer loyalty. It's not rocket science.
Well, I want to pick just a few of the elements of a platform, and one of them seems to be writing a book. And you're an author. You know the importance of that, the doors that can open. And
yes.
more and more people are wanting to write a book. So I guess take us through that. What does that look like? Let's say I have a book idea, but I'm not sure where to go. What is it that you do for authors? And I guess let's talk about both from getting a publishing deal, and let's look at also self-publishing if a deal's not an option.
Great. So the decision about whether or not a deal is an option has 100% to do with whether or not you've built a platform. So as a literary agent, which is my primary role in the world, as a literary agent, I'm looking for someone who has a platform. I don't care what your book is about. I handle only nonfiction. So anything from, how to raise your puppy to, how to lose 60 pounds in 60 days, whatever it is, how to build a business, how to I have books on all kinds of science and all this. Okay, so I don't really care what your topic is. I care if you have a platform, because the publishers are buying your platform, which is your ability to participate in the successful sale of your book. Obviously, the publisher's business is to sell books. Your job is to build the book to become so successful and build your platform to get the book deal in the first place, that it all works together and it grows your core business, right? That's the purpose of writing a book. So when people come to me, the first question I say is, are you speaking? How many patients do you have on your mailing list? If they were a doctor, what's unique about the way you administer your practice? What's your specialty? I mean, what part of chiropractics are you an expert in? Do you have any proof? Has there been any interviews or articles about you? This kind of stuff. Do you work with celebrity? All those kinds of questions. All those are components of a platform. So if you have those elements, then the next step will be to create what's called a nonfiction book proposal. A book proposal is a very precise document, and it helps an individual outline their concept in a way that makes it clear to someone else. I always tell potential authors that a book proposal is to the publishing industry what a business plan is when you're out there looking for venture capital or investors, right? And it's for the same reason. You're trying to get someone else to write a check to fund your dream. And in the case of a book, if you're a doctor and you don't want to give that up and just go be a full-time writer, the truth is that this is not only funding your dream, it's creating the advertising revenue that will last you for, if you do it right, 3 to 5 years because of one book. So this is a very important investment. The document is very specific. Once you have the platform, then you write the document or have someone write it. Doesn't matter how it gets done. And then there's all kinds of writers who do pieces of that. And then the agent you select or who agrees to represent you based on your platform more accurately sells it to a publisher. And then you have about 6 months, 9 months, a year to write it. During that time, depending on who your agent is, you will be instructed in how to leverage those opportunities of writing the book, which is not a matter of just sitting down and typing out your wisdom from your beautiful place on, Maui. It's a matter of using the time that you have, the interviewing in the book, all these other things to build your platform additionally during the production of the book. And then when the book comes out, leveraging the book, particularly for media. I don't mean media for within any profession, within the chiropractic industry, for instance. I mean getting real media that's going to attract real patients who are really going to come to you. And if you have a book with a legitimate publisher, you have the opportunity to actually get media in national media. So you might be able to get big newspapers, that cover the nation, like, New York Times or Chicago Tribune or whatever, big papers that have a large reputation to interview you. You might get radio shows and podcasts. You might get television shows. You might get an appearance on some daytime talk show. There's all kinds of ways to splice the success that immediately follows a successfully published book. So that's one strategy. This strategy is the one that's most likely to create massive results in all kinds of ways. Then there's plan B. For people who refuse or are, for other reasons, unwilling or incapable of building a platform, many of those people will say to themselves, well, golly gee, I'll write a book and I'll self-publish it and all these great things will happen to me anyway. Well, they really won't. And what will happen is you'll have a book and That's it. You and over 500,000 people this year will rush out and self-publish and think something great's going to happen, but the public will not find that book. And if you don't have a platform, which is why you couldn't get a real deal in the beginning, when you've self-published, you will have just shot yourself in the foot because you'll need to build a platform, but now it will be too late because the book will already be out there. And worst of all, the book will likely fail. The average self-published book in America sells 117 to 246 copies. So even if it's nonfiction and even if you're the big shot chiropractor in town, it's not going to do you any favors. It's not going to bring customers to you. And if a book takes you 10 or 12 hours to write or 70 hours to write or 150 hours to write, or you write somebody a check to write the book, you've just lost all that time and money because you didn't do it right. So you could build a platform and self-publish. That's possible. But without building that platform, whatever you write will fail. And it will fail also. If you even found a publisher, it would fail. But you can't find a publisher unless you have a platform. So it all kind of works together. The point of the book is not to have your knowledge out there unless you're writing a textbook, right? Unless you believe you're going to get course adoption from a university or a chiropractic school or something. The benefit of all of this is the platform building process that goes around the process of creating the book. Then whether the book is successful or not, who the heck cares? The truth is that you've doubled, tripled, quadrupled, quintupled your practice. That's what we're doing books for. That's what people should be focused on. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, she's an agent. Of course she's going to say that. No, I'm saying that because people limp back to me with their crummy self-published books and they say, it sold 120 copies. What can you do for me? And the answer is nothing, because the industry knows that you don't know how to promote yourself, so no credible publisher is ever going to take a shot on you. So if you want to self-publish, be prepared to self-publish for the rest of your life.
Well, while you're talking, it really reminds me of an experience I had in the music business. So way back in the day, I played in a band, and we put out a CD, like a lot of bands did at that time, and really thought that, here it is. We made our own CD, and this is going to get us attention. And I can't remember how many we sold, but I still have a box or two around my house to this day that did not sell. And, and really looking at how the music business works, when they sign a band, the first thing they ask is, what's your following? How many people come to your shows? What cities are you in?
So true.
It's the same exact story, and audience, following, platform, whatever it's called. It's all, what is the capacity that you've created for someone to buy your product? And I think so many people don't get that. They think if I build it, if I write it, they will come, and then it's crickets.
Yeah, crickets. It's so sad, too, because now they can't get away from it. You have a failed book. No publisher is going to take a shot on somebody who's failed a book unless suddenly you signed with a national, if you become the anchor of a national show, you get to overcome the fact your first book failed, but you're not going to become an anchor if you don't have a platform to begin with, so on and so forth. So it's really important, and I'm not trying to be mean, but here's the great news, and this is why I wrote my book on platform building. It's my 31st personal book. I have, like I said, more than 1,500 for clients, but this is my 31st book. I write under 9 different names. I have some other business books under my name, Wendy Keller, but the difference is that the platform book is near and dear to my heart because I wrote it so I can stop telling people, look, I promise you, building a platform is easy. Just pick which piece you want to do, start doing it, make sure it's working, modify it if it isn't, and you'll be fine. Because it's really not hard, and it's fun if you do it the right way, because you get to enjoy all the cool stuff about being a published author long before you even have to write a book. You can be interviewed right now. You could be doing speaking engagements or bringing in public right now, so that when you get there, you have a tribe of committed. I know you did a great program with Seth Godin, right? So there's all this great opportunity there that you can create if you build that platform starting today. And it's not hard to do, and it doesn't cost a lot of money or time.
Well, let's use me as an example. So let's say I've taken your online quiz, and the result of that is that, I'm an extrovert, and I enjoy speaking, and I don't mind getting up in front of an audience, that I have some resources to hire some teams and put it in place. What would your advice be to me? Where would we start? And just take us quickly through that process.
Well, if you were already speaking, or you were willing to start speaking, which is obviously one of the categories, I would say to you, okay, well, Well, I will say to you, we'll just go through it right now. I consult a lot of businesses, and so of all different types in this same space. So if you'll permit me, I'll ask you the questions I would ask you if we were really having our first consulting call. Okay. So, okay, great. So do you want to speak just about physical health and chiropractics, or is there some bigger topic that you have in mind?
So my answer would be it would start with chiropractic. That's what would be, gets people interested. But so much we find in health that you have to be committed to care, and there are bigger changes behind the scene. So it almost gets into almost life coaching in a way, because what helps you to become successful at your health are the same skills, turns out, to be successful in life.
Tell me one of those skills.
The ability to have discipline.
Discipline, okay. What other worlds do people need discipline in besides their coming back to their chiropractor or sitting up straight or lifting a box by bending their knees?
Well, I'd have to say in making the choices in their life, let's just take finances. Some people aren't disciplined savers, or they're not disciplined about, they'll put play before work and they'll end up having a lot of fun, but without that discipline of being financially responsible, they wind up in a bad place.
Okay, so the money in the business world of speaking is speaking to associations, corporations, groups of people who are entrepreneurs or business people or even employees. So that's about 85% of the speaking business. So if you wanted, for instance, to build a regional chiropractic practice based on what you just said, I would say to myself, I happen to have this fancy credential of being a doctor, but in the meantime, I have this principle about discipline, and every single business person, whether they are the receptionist somewhere or they are the entrepreneur or even the C-level executive, needs more about discipline. So I would advise you to consider creating something, and we can certainly help you with that, but creating a program focused on the positive side of discipline. So we would go through a process of determining what the primary benefits are of being a disciplined person, because nobody's going to sign up for you bunch of lazy bums, you need to be more disciplined.
Right.
So we have to switch it. Increase your health, your wealth, and your, whatever, your love life by becoming more disciplined, or the 6 strategies of discipline and how they'll transform your life for the better. Those kinds of things. And then I would suggest that you built out that speech, and then using the principles that I teach in the book and I teach one-on-one, you would build the components that would make you get hired as a speaker as opposed to some other speaker they might be considering for that event. And then you start marketing it, and then you would get bookings. And then from the bookings, not only would they find out that you are a fabulous chiropractor, they would also find out that it would be really valuable for them to, maybe be involved in your coaching program, which you could use as an adjunct to the chiropractic program. Or they might be interested in taking your online study program that you're administering because you've written 6 ebooks and done 6 videos, which is way more profitable than writing, for instance, a self-published book. Right? Now you could sell the self-published book as maybe the manual instead of self-publishing it, right? You can now sell it as a whole course. There's all kinds of ways to splice that based on your personal goals. So that would be a pretty easy way to do it. You could use the live events as either a loss leader, which means you're speaking for free, usually in a small geographic region, roughly 50 miles, in circumference, or you could use it as getting paid. I mean, a lot of my speakers start out going, well, I don't really care if I get paid. And a year later, they're starting to get $5,000. I had a conversation with a client this morning, and I said, okay, so what's your speaking fee right now? Because I have a booking for him. And he said, it's $10,000. And I said, how many did you do at $10,000 this year? He said, well, I only did 8, but I have 7 scheduled already for next year, and it hasn't started. And I said, and how many did you have before we started working together? He said, I had done 3. 2 of them were for free, and one of them was for $1,500. Now, that's not about me being such a genius, although, of course, my mother thinks I am. But it's really about him following the strategies that I taught him when we were consulting. That's the difference. And so that's what I would do with you, Rich. I would bring you into this process of seeing where else your speech fits. Because sometimes when we're experts, it's like, I only have a hammer, so everything is a nail. by thinking outside the spine, in the case of chiropractors, you could create an entire business, a secondary revenue stream that would also enhance your practice and your reputation, build your platform, build your brand, so that you become a unique fixture in the healthcare environment, and also so that you open enough doors that you could step into being a successful author or having your own TV show or whatever it is that is in your heart.
Yeah, while you were talking, we were talking about discipline, and it really, probably would not be, people wouldn't be breaking down the doors to come in and hear about how they can be more disciplined, but something like take control of your health and your wealth, or something like that, I think would be a great way to call that, a title of a program that would be, maybe people would be more open to that, but I can really see moving that into some courses or a book or a combination of those.
Absolutely. And on top of that, you and I can sit here all day long and come up with titles and ideas, but there are all kinds of ways to concretely test stuff. I'm a big tester. So you would use social media and a few other strategies, some of which I touch on in the book, to talk about how do you test it before you start putting money into doing something, that may or may not have the right title, because the title of a live event or the title of an article is so incredibly critical. So there are some strategies you can use to test that, to find out where the audience is going to respond before you put a dime into the process. It's very simple. I can show you how to do it for less than $160. Create something. So I guess that's more than a dime. But for $160, I can teach you how to find the perfect title. And that will attract the public into a live event or into a training program or into whatever you've got to sell. It's so important to really listen to the audience as opposed to just standing there, trying to cram stuff down people's throats, which is what most people do because they don't understand the nuances of platform building.
Well, I love that you mentioned testing, because in the world of, for example, online marketing, they do split testing. And for those who don't know what that is, that's where if I log on to buy something, let's say at Amazon, I might see one screen one time I log in, but another time I get to see a slightly different one. And they are storing that data to see what the buying habits are, what am I clicking, what is the phrasing of whatever is at the top. It might just be a different word, buy today or look now or something like that. But they collect that data and they make tweaks as they go forward. And yeah, if we can jump in and do some, low-cost testing, that is going to save us so much money, time, heartache on the back end.
True that, and of course that's Amazon. They've got billions to spend on this stuff, and they do. But there are ways you can do it. Like I said, $160. I mean, there are ways you can do this stuff and quickly get to the results that will help you build your platform. Language, color, theme, emotion, practice, what type of ways people want you to reach out. Do they want you to be warm and loving and caring, or do they want you to be factual? I mean, there's 1,000 permutations, and by using that knowledge and by being attentive to the analytics, you could really create quickly a platform that grows because you've been smart about it. As most people come and say, well, I've written a bunch of blog posts and none of them are getting comments. Well, that's because you're writing what you think people want to read. Try and write what they tell you they want to read or listen to or whatever. I mean, flip it. Do it the way the people want it. Give them what they want, right? Like I think P.T. Barnum said that.
Well, I want to stick with the topic of public speaking. I want to ask you, how does somebody, let's say we've put together a great program, we're ready to go out and reach out to these corporations and schedule these talks. How do we do that? How do we get past the gatekeeper?
Well, there is no gatekeeper. There is a meeting planner. So a meeting planner is the person who makes the buy decision. A meeting planner for an event, let's say a bigger event, might have to look at, let's say they're going to bring in 21 speakers over a 3-day event. Well, you're not going to get some of those engagements because at the beginning and at the end, they're going to start out with, the biggest person they can afford, a celebrity, a former president, an actor, even somebody local who's whatever, depends on their budget, right? So then they're going to do keynotes. A keynote speaker is a speaker who addresses the entire assembly. So if you have, 150 of your members there, you've got a keynote speaker who addresses everybody, but then it maybe breaks into what are called breakout sessions or concurrent sessions. We've all been to those. In some cases, they are CME at medical conferences, et cetera, where there's 5 of them and they're on different topics and you pick which one you want to go to and they're in a smaller room. That's a place where most speakers can start for free, or anything. Really, those will pay, depending on the venue, they'll pay anything up to $5,000. But this meeting planner, the person who's in charge of doing the initial selection process, looks at an average of 20 people for every single open slot, from that marquee and keynote level down to the very competitive breakout sessions. So they're looking at all these people. They're making decisions. That decision is made in about 8 seconds, whether or not you're going to be worth any more time, because they're going through it really fast. That's not my number. It's an industry number. In 8 seconds, they make the decision. That decision is based on all kinds of factors. They're going to look at your demo reel, which, before everybody rolls their eyes in the back of their head, a demo reel isn't that hard to put together if you understand the psychology behind it. So you put this demo reel together, and you've got a website that is compelling, not one that looks like your cousin did it, or you went to Elegant Themes or Solo Themes or whatever.com and slapped some stuff together, but one that actually looks like a speaker website and is focused on being a speaker website. You put that together. You've tested your copy, so you've got a platform. When the meeting planner is engaged enough after those 8 seconds to look at your demo reel, if they still like you after the demo reel, they're going to browse your website and see what kind of engagement you're getting, for instance, on your blogs. They're going to go over to your social media by typing in your name and see what else you've got. And if a couple of hits show up from journalists that are not your mother or your brother-in-law, and they're not some pokey little, free newspaper they give away, but are legitimate because you did a book or you're doing a live event or you've done other things in your platform, now suddenly you look like somebody who's legitimate, not just another speaker with their hat in the hand. And now you have now you're in a position to get offered the opportunity to speak at that event. Obviously, you do a great job and the word spreads, blah, blah, blah. But to get that event, there is a strategy. And I probably spend half of my days consulting brand new speakers who think that just because they have a great speech idea, it's magically going to sell. Well, that's not how the business works, So, yeah, that's pretty much the strategy, though. If you took notes, you now know pretty much everything I know.
Well, I am taking notes, so I'll make sure to review them.
Oh, shucks. I'm blushing now.
Let me ask you this. Is there a typical time that seems to work the best for an audience?
What do you mean a typical time?
I don't understand. Is it a half-hour talk or a 2-hour lecture, or is it whatever is called for in the setting?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking me if you're going to do an event in your office, how long it should be, or if you're going to do a keynote for, the IBM annual convention?
Yeah,
what are you asking?
Yeah, let's say I'm invited to come and I speak at a corporate lunch and learn, for example. Those are typically about an hour, but do you find that 30 minutes is, people pay attention for 30 minutes and after that they start checking their phones? Is there any...
People pay attention, unless you're good, people will pay attention for less than 8 minutes. Adult learning theory is 8 minutes. So think about all the college professors out there wringing their hands over that number. But 8 minutes is about it. But the average duration for which you're hired is usually 45 to 60 minutes. And you got to do something. Like I've got a speech I'm doing on Tuesday, and I got to fill 90 minutes with a bunch of medical doctors. It's a CME program I do. And it's tough to get them engaged and get them to stay there because they're immediately looking at their pagers, pretending that they have emergencies and leaving the room unless I really get creative. So hopefully I'll achieve that. I've done this one before, but yeah, so it really changes. Your platform skills are an important part of it, which is why nobody who thinks that public speaking is super scary or they only whisper when they speak because they're scared. You probably shouldn't be a speaker. Take the biz quiz at kellermedia.com and solve your problem before you create it, right? Don't become a speaker, become a writer or an author or do television or whatever. There's a lot of other ways. But yeah, as a speaker, if you can juggle chainsaws while you're giving your valuable message, you'll have a much better chance, especially if they're running and there's a chance of death, right? The old gladiator sport.
Well, let me ask you this while we're on the subject. Do you use PowerPoint presentations when you speak, or do you prefer just to go speak?
If you are teaching or training, then you use PowerPoint. So if they have to see something physically, but if you are going there to be a keynote speaker and you use PowerPoint, you're probably not getting paid more than $1,500.
Wow, that makes sense. And I think I think from personal experience, if I go to hear a speaker or there's a meeting or something like that, I don't know what it is, but almost automatically, if the PowerPoint starts, I sort of check out. You know, I get more engaged in the speaker when they're just speaking. If they put up a slide and then they just speak, but they're, you know, not reading word for word, and every so often they point to a graph or something, then I'm more likely to engage. But it's almost like having gone to school and, you know, sat through literally hours of PowerPoints. My brain just sort of turns that off when it sees it. So I don't know if that's the case for professionals, but it has become the case for me.
Sounds like you're going to really crummy events, frankly, Rich.
I need to spend more money and start going to the good ones, I think.
Well, you know, because I often speak to groups of doctors on a very different topic than this, but because I often speak to groups of doctors, it's very funny because sometimes I'll catch the tail end of the speaker before me, and invariably it's some doctor standing there reading his PowerPoint, and there are 500 words on the screen, and they're in 12-point type, and he's the only one who can read them. And you can't read them from 5 feet away. It's like, what were you thinking? Sometimes I think I should just go and start doing PowerPoint skills for medical professionals as a training.
Yeah, different skill set than being a surgeon.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we are going to link to your book in our show notes, and I encourage all of our listeners to pick up a copy for themselves so they can get started on building their platform. I want to step back from the specifics of writing and platform building and being successful in that arena. Let's talk about the larger picture, and that is being successful in life. So you've obviously had a lot of success in your career, and we learn a lot when we have successes, but we tend to learn even more from setbacks. So do you have a failure or an obstacle or a setback you overcome? And what did you learn, and what was that setback, and what were the skills did you use to overcome that?
Well, there are a lot of things I could choose to answer that question, because like every business person, I've had a lot of obstacles, a lot of setbacks. But I think the thing that's most helpful in general to audiences when I tell this story. In 1991, I was traveling in England with my husband and my 2 small children. My son was 4 years old. My daughter was 18 months old at the time. The second day we were there, we were driving through the Cotswolds, if you know England at all. And my husband didn't look both ways at a stop sign. And a car hit us at 35 miles an hour, which doesn't sound like much until it hits you. And I broke everything on my left-hand side from my clavicle to my knee. I had extraordinary internal damage. My pelvis was folded in half against the drive shaft because, of course, in England, the driver and the passenger are reversed. But the worst part is both of my children died in that car accident.
Oh, my goodness.
And there aren't really words to describe what that was like. I didn't even recognize my physical injuries for months, because all I could think about, of course, was the loss of the children. At that time, I was already an agent. I had the business. In fact, we were there for a business purpose for me. And I was flat on my back. I was 26 years old. I was being told they would be amputating my left leg below the knee because of the damage. My nerves were permanently damaged, supposedly. And I'm left-handed, and I couldn't move my left arm. But more than that, the aching anguish day after day, month after month of losing my children was unbelievable, unimaginable unless someone has been through it. And as time passed, I started to realize that I had 2 choices. I could either kill myself, which, was a little hard to do since I couldn't even sit up yet, much less walk. I could kill myself, or I could make a decision to try and make the best of the obstacle that I was facing, try and make my life have meaning and possibly even joy again someday. And little by little, as I focused on that goal, things came into my field of vision, and I was able to ever so slowly start to take steps and apply an extraordinary amount of grit and perseverance day by day, month by month, year by year, until I could walk again, until I could laugh again, until I could bear another child. My baby girl is now 24, my only living child. And I have to say that the lighthearted, I could get over this, or I had a business setback, or I lost all my money, is a different type of thing to overcome than extraordinary personal tragedy. But the principles for overcoming whatever you've faced, a bad divorce, a heartache, injury, illness, death of a loved one, it's all the same. It comes down to that decision to get better, the decision to get through it. The perseverance that it takes comes from the hope that with consistent right effort in the right direction, eventually one day things will improve.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing such a deeply personal and profound loss with us. I have 3 small children myself and a 4th child from a previous marriage, and I just cannot imagine what that was like to go through. But not only to go through, but to cope and come out, with putting your life together and going on to be very successful. So I congratulate you on that, and thanks again for sharing.
Thank you, Rich. And the moral of that story, if there is one for other people, is this, that everyone suffers their own pain and their own losses at 100%. I mean, when I was 6 and my hamster died, it was the worst day of my life. When my children died when I was 26, it was the worst day of my life. Our grief is relative. Our pain is relative. What's hurting one person emotionally might be nothing for someone else. And I feel like though there are some of your listeners who are going through a divorce, or who have a parent with dementia, or who have a child who's causing them troubles, or whatever it is. And it's just that decision to get through it and get better, and then taking the actions as they come to you. And one day you wake up and you've made it 10 miles down the road, and you can see the light, and it starts to get better and better from there. Well, suffering is universal.
Yeah, and I can tell you as a chiropractor, I knew that I was going to be dealing with people in pain. And so often I would ask, how are you since the last time I saw you? How's your back been? And are you feeling better? And I would tap into something deeper and something bigger. And it just came with the territory. And I began to realize that so many of us hurt out there. And I'm not a counselor or a therapist, but yeah, all of us have something. And when we're a healer, you have to look at the mind and the body and everything as one, and it just comes with the territory, in our job at least.
So true. And there are so many ways that we can be an inspiration to others by just carrying our own burdens in a way that makes sense, no matter what it is, no matter whether or not you compare it to someone else's pain or loss or suffering. Just finding that way to be encouraging toward yourself and toward others is so critically important. And I think that particularly kind of looping back to what we talked about with the books and with the platform and all this other stuff. I mean, you have an opportunity to be heard. If you're listening to this podcast and your heart is saying, I really would like to do something. I'd like to serve. Yeah, it'll grow your business and that's great. But you have an opportunity to do something that's more than just type some words on paper or show up on a TV show or whatever it is you're going to do to grow. You have a chance to actually interact and touch lives in a way you might never get inside the confines of your own office. There are so many things out there that you can do that are meaningful and deep and valuable just because you're willing to stick out your neck a little bit and take some effort.
Well, who are your personal heroes who have inspired you?
I would have to say Andrew Carnegie for his incredible willingness to give and serve at the highest levels he was capable. Of course, the great steel magnate who empowered and financed Napoleon Hill to write Think and Grow Rich. I would say that certainly Tony Robbins, he is why I am alive today. I was on his infomercial for 4 years as one of his success stories because I used his personal power cassettes back in the day. I used his cassettes to help me find the steps to get out of the incredible morass of physical and emotional anguish in which I was living. And I think that probably every person I've worked with who has come to this work as writing or speaking or platform building or even just building a business where they really have a focus on serving their public or their employees or other stakeholders, every one of those people inspires me because when I get to know them and I hear their stories, I recognize the unity of both suffering and joy on this planet. And I find heroes every day. It's a great part of my job.
Well, is there anything that you do on a daily basis that helps you be successful and helps keep you on track? It could be rituals or affirmations, anything like that.
3 things. Number 1, when I wake up, I'm always in a good mood when I wake up. I guess I wasn't when I was little, if you ask my mom, but I am now. I wake up in a good mood every day, and I spend some time journaling, not just about what I want to do that day, but about the thoughts in my mind and the decisions I want and the kind of person I want to be, et cetera. That sounds more glorious than it is. I write a page maybe. And then I get up and I row. I live in Marina Del Rey, and I row for an hour and lift weights for another half hour, and I feel energized physically. And while I come home and I'm sweating because I've been rowing so hard, I spend that time meditating, usually a half hour every day of meditation. And it kind of puts me in the right mood spiritually, mentally, and physically for whatever's going to happen that day. The client who has a meltdown because the publisher said the books would be at the bookstore for the signing and it's not there. And, all the drama that we all have in every day. And it just helps me to really stay focused on what's important to me and who I want to show up as in the world. And if I can show up as the highest version of myself for that day, hopefully it increases year by year, but for that day, then I've done the right thing and I've given to the highest and fullest extent of which I'm capable.
Well, our time together today is drawing to a close, but before we let you go, we do have some final thoughts. Do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Of course I do. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Platform Building by Wendy Keller.
I've heard of it. It sounds so familiar. Well, we will link to that in the show notes. Anything else? You mentioned Dale Carnegie and
sure,
and Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich,
and Tony Robbins. Yeah,
Tony Robbins.
Those are all important books. If you want to ask me what I'm reading right now, I'm reading The Essential Rumi, which a lot of Americans have never touched, and I didn't either. I don't have a particular faith to which I adhere, but The Essential Rumi is a really fascinating book right now. So that's one of them I'm reading. I'm also reading, I usually read like 7 or 8 books at a time. I'm reading The Art of Woo, which is about building relationships. I think it's really important to keep learning, and I learn by reading, so I've always got, 6, 7, 8 books open at any given time.
What's the best business advice you've ever been told?
That it's about them. If you have just a second, I'd love to tell you the story. Yeah. Okay. So I was fortunate to get out of high school quite early. I graduated at 16, enrolled in college at 16, and got my first paid newspaper job at 16. I was a little bit of an eager beaver. And I followed around the reporters for months and then finally got my first story assignment. The story I'm about to tell you changed my entire life, every single level of my life from that day to this. I'm 16 years old. I'm assigned to cover a very mediocre story about something that had happened in the city council conversation last night. I got to tell you, I'm in rural Prescott, Arizona. Nothing happened at the city council meeting. And I sit there and I spent over 11 hours writing this story. And I presented it to the reporter, Joel Millman, who was training me at the time. And he's up in Colorado now as a big hotshot journalist. And I'm there and I'm going through this stupid article and I'm reading it over his shoulder. And I've put my blood, sweat, and tears in this thing. And he gets to the bottom of the screen. He's read the whole thing and he clicks delete. And I said, Joel, what did you do? And I'm horrified. And he says, Wendy, he used bad words, but the summary of what he said is, nobody cares what you think. They only pay attention to what they care about. And the minute we shift our perspective in the world to what the other person is thinking or feeling or wants to read or hear or absorb or learn, every single thing in our life changes just by that shift of perspective. That has been the number one principle in all the marketing copy I've written, in the 31 books, in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients I've helped, consulted to become speakers or authors or successful business people. That one shift in perspective makes all the difference, because then you're not writing from an ivory tower. You're writing from down there in the street, working with the people. That's the difference.
Wow, and that's so true. I mean, one of the guests on our show that we've had who's a chiropractor, she says that treat every patient as if they have a sign on their forehead that says MMFI, and that's make me feel important. And
absolutely.
It's absolutely the truth universally. And I find myself in meetings or conversations with other people, I think we all do this. We just wander off to our own perspective and our own issues. But if we can get the discipline, there's that word again, to really keep the focus on the other person, then, yeah, that's golden.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I'm so grateful for having had this chance to chat with you. Thank you so much for this privilege, Rich.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Can you mention again the best ways to get in touch with you and find out more about what you do?
Sure. KellerMedia.com, KELLER media.com. And if you're interested in taking the Biz Quiz, KellerMedia.com/BizQuiz. And if you're interested in finding out about the book and all the benefits and stuff, there's those kinds of online freebies loaded in that, you can go to KellerMedia.com/platform-book. There you go.
Well, Wendy Keller, thank you so much for sharing your wit and wisdom with our listeners today, and your profound story as well. I think we've learned a lot, and I wrote down a whole lot that I'm going to be using as I go forward in building my platform. So thank you so much, and continue to have a wonderful life.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Cairo Business Mojo podcast at www.cairobusinessmojo.com.